Hi, folks. Daniel Webster here, back at the dining table where I learn to listen to and to tell stories. Thought I would share with you another one tonight. Hope that you appreciate this one. When I was a senior in high school, it came time for spring break, and most of my class from East Tennessee, Knoxville, at least it seemed like most of my class, all came to the beaches in Florida. Everybody had made plans. They were talking about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And when school let out, people jumped in their cars and started heading south. My two best friends and I decided we were going to do our spring break a little bit differently. Not sure we thought this out entirely carefully, but what we planned to do was go over to Mont Eagle, Tennessee. Mont Eagle is a place kind of in the hills and mountains of Tennessee. And we were going to spend our time spelunking, cave exploring. Now, it had not occurred to us that if we did that, everybody else in our class would come back brown as nuts and we would come back whiter than we had been before spring break ever started. But that was our plan. We were going to go spelunking. And we'd heard about some caves that very few people had gone to for quite some time. And so we made plans. One of my friends' grandparents owned a campground, and so we were staying at that campground, and we would head out from there. It took a couple of days of going up a long creek bed to finally find the cave where we were going to be exploring. We'd taken plenty of food. We'd even taken our sleeping bags if we decided to stay overnight. And we got up and we found this cave and we went in and began to explore. We had several lights each, we had lots of batteries, and we had candles, and even two of us had carbide lanterns over our heads so that we could see what we were doing. After a couple of hours, we were well back in the cave and we came to what was a hole about the size of what you see a manhole cover on a street. As I said, there were three of us. My two friends were a little bigger around than I. I was the tall, skinny kid. And so we decided, before we get down there, all three of us, why don't we just drop me down that hole and let me do a little exploring and see if it's worth all of us coming down. And so I dropped my legs down, and then I dropped down to my arms, and then I raised my arms over my head and slipped down and hit the dirt about 3 feet below my feet. When I hit, it kind of went poof. I'd landed in dust, except it was really funny smelling dust. I walked around a little bit and I really couldn't go more than 3 or 4 feet in any direction. It was simply a small room with no outlet, and so it was time to get back up. Meanwhile, every step I took, I kicked up some of this weird smelling dust. My friends and I, we decided that I needed to get out of there. There wasn't anything to explore. They certainly weren't coming in. So I raised my arms up over my head. Each one grabbed one, but I really couldn't help get myself out. I just had to hold my arms over my head. One guy grabbed one arm, one guy grabbed the other, and I pushed up a little bit, sort of jumped up, but I really couldn't help beyond that. And so they pulled and almost had me where I could grab the sides of the hole. And I got the giggles, and then they got the giggles, and they dropped me back down. Poof! Now I am in a really, really dusty room. There's just dust everywhere. It's up my nose, it's in my mouth, it's in my ears, it's everywhere, and it's got this weird smell. And they're picking me up again, trying to get me up. And I am almost where I can grab the sides and help myself out of the hole when suddenly it hit me what this dust was. And I looked at one of them and I said, "It's guano." Well, he got tickled. He dropped one arm. The other guy got tickled. He dropped the other arm. And now I hit the dust again, and now it's even cloudier in there. And if you don't know what guano is, it's bat crap. This means there are bats in this cave. And they like to defecate in this particular room in which I am stuck. So now I have guano dust in my eyes, guano dust up my nose, guano dust in my ears, on my clothes, in my mouth. It is just grossing me out, and yet it's kind of funny. Well, they tried to pull me out again. I'm almost where I can get out. They dropped me laughing again. Poof! Even more guano, more dust all over the place. And I'm now starting to choke. And I'm having a real hard time breathing. And so finally I just said, guys, we got to stop for a minute. We got to let this dust settle out, and we got to stop giggling, because every time we do, I get dropped back down here. So we waited a few minutes. The dust began to settle. They reached down. I took my little jump. They pulled me up. I'm almost there again, and we all got the giggles one more time. Poof! Dust everywhere. This time we are really tired, and we're also getting nervous, and now it's not so funny. Are we going to be able to get me out of the hole? Are we going to be able to get me away from the guano? And so we wait about 5 minutes this time till everything settles down. And then we all grit our teeth. I reach my arms up, I take a little jump, and they pull as hard as they can, and I can finally get my arms up over the edge of the hole, and I can finally get myself out. And all three of us are exhausted, and we are just lying there, catching our breath, me catching a real breath and not a guano dust breath. And it's just, we're exhausted. So now we have a decision to make. Are we going to try to hike back out of here, because we've got a few miles to go back down a creek bed to the car, and we're just not sure what to do. So we decided we're going to rest a little bit, eat a little bit, and then decide whether we're going to leave that cave that afternoon or not. Well, we eat, we rest, and we do a little more exploring, and then we come back out to the head of the cave, and what we do not know at this point is that there has been a major cloud burst, and the creek bed has risen up to the very edge of the entrance to the cave. We can't leave. And if it rains much more, this little flash flood that is going on is going to spill over into the cave, and we might be in there for a day or two. We're not worried about whether we're going to live or die. There are higher places and lower places in that cave, but we're not sure if we're going to get out right away. So we go some exploring, and we find some rooms well back in the cave that actually seem to be up a little bit from the level of the entrance of the cave, just in case water comes flowing back there. And it is now night, and we are exhausted, so we make a decision that we are just going to sleep there and wait till the next morning and see if the water has receded. We're lying there. We are using food that we have brought in, our packs, for pillows, and we are trying to sleep. At one point, one of us turned a flashlight on, and just inches above our heads, we realized the ceiling was lined with bats, just hanging inches over our heads. Well, now we're thoroughly creeped out. So we move to another room. We use our food for pillows, and in the middle of the night, I hear chewing right under my ear. Something is tearing open the food that we have saved for breakfast. I ball my fist up, and I reach over and I slam my hand down, not sure what it is that was making the noise. I hit a stalagmite, bloodied my hand all to hell. It was terrible. Turn on the flashlight. The food has been nibbled on. All the food under my head and under each of my two friends' heads has all been nibbled on. And we looked around. We didn't think that was bats. And out of the corner of my eye, scurrying off, we saw rats leaving this room. We decided we'd head back for the entrance of the cave. It was still about 2 o'clock in the morning, and we got there and the water is still rushing and we can't leave, but we're going to stay up near there because we haven't seen rats or bats. we managed the next day. The water receded enough that we could get out of the cave and sort of walk along up a ridge and make our way back in the general direction of our car, but finally we had to ford the creek, which was almost a river at this point, to get back to the car and head back to the campground. The whole thing had been a crazy experience. A few days later, we were back in school. People were coming back all tan, brown as nuts from their Florida vacations, and there we were, pale as ghosts from ours. And I don't remember even what I said or what it was I did that people looked at me funny and said, well, that's just wackadoodle. And one of my buddies from the cave experience just looked at him and said, well, you know, he's batshit crazy.